Alright, hi everybody. This morning did the Tour of Watopia Stage 3. This is one of the makeup events. I've already done all the other 4, so I just kind of wanted to knock this out. Originally planned to do this at like 8 a.m. and ended up waking up early and jumped in on the 6:45 a.m. one. Legs were not feeling super great today. Had a pretty interesting over-under session on Friday, and then about 3 hours of endurance yesterday. So definitely not feeling super fresh this morning. My general goal for this course, which is out and back again. So it starts in the Fuego Flats desert area. Eventually makes its way over to Volcano via the Sprint and the S's. That route, you go up the Volcano Climb, come down, and then you go over the reverse KOM, and then back to the start-finish area. So there are the two main climbs. There's the Volcano Climb, which I think we did in about 7 minutes today, and the reverse KOM, which is kind of in the 3 to 4 minute range. So my goal was really just to sit in, save energy, not do a whole lot. That's kind of my race strategy anyway, but today definitely not feeling super fresh, so definitely tried to minimize the amount of time I was on the front or pulling. And then the Volcano Climb, I'm gonna kind of walk back some things I might have said in a previous video. I still don't think it's a great climb to, unless you're like significantly stronger than everybody, to just blast it from bottom to top. But there are some steeper sections at the bottom and at the top that are decent places to attack on and try to get a gap. Depending upon the strength of the field that you're riding with, if you get a gap, you might be able to just continue just keeping the pressure on and get that gap to grow. But today, since I wasn't really feeling too great, I figured I would just try to stick with the group and then throw down pretty hard on the reverse KOM. I'll kind of talk more about that when we get there. I'm actually going to skip forward because there's just about, 20 minutes of just endurance-paced riding until we get over to the volcano. Nothing very exciting happened, so I might do a fast forward or something, but it was pretty uneventful for this part at the beginning, aside from that dude P dot time trials off the front. They're using virtual power, so I'm not going to bother chasing it, and they basically put down like over 5 watts per kilo for the entire hour, which is doable, but it's just so easy to get things wrong if you're in a virtual power setup. It's very finicky. I think it's a great way for people to get into Zwift and to use it, but as far as events go, I'm not going to chase them down, because it could be that they over tightened or didn't tighten the tension enough for the roller against the tire, or the tire pressure changed, or maybe their tire changed and has different rolling resistance. There's so many variables that can affect it that you'd have to get in dialed in perfectly every time, even if you have a reliable trainer that you've warmed up to have reliable power. So I'm not going to jump on that. That's kind of a standard Zwift racing thing, is to not take advantage of the people on virtual power just going off the front. Alright, here we are at the top of the Volcano Climb. One thing I haven't mentioned before is the importance of kind of pushing over the top of the climb and staying with the group. I was going to cut out the downhill section because it's not probably the most exciting, but if you pay attention to the time gaps, what you'll notice is that, and the power that we're putting out, is that the group I'm with, we kind of keep the tempo going. It's a moderate effort, nothing super crazy. The people behind us are going to be putting in a lot of work, and they don't catch us until almost the bottom of the climb. So that's, another 4 minutes of hard effort for them just to catch us, and that's going to tire them out later. So if you have the energy, or if you need to change your pacing plan so that you can punch it at the end and stay with the group that you're with, that's a good thing. There have been times that I have just popped off right at that little steep section at the top, and then I couldn't catch back on the downhill. I was just too tired. It was too much effort to try to close even some of those small gaps. And I think right now it says it's 1 to 2 seconds, and you'll see it just kind of hangs out there for quite a bit longer. And we're not necessarily doing a ton of work here, but behind us you'll notice that their effort level, at least for the person pulling on the front, ends up being fairly high. Alright, so here we are at the reverse KOM. A lot of people just do a pretty similar strategy on this, which is right up in front of us at that corner is the steepest part. If you're lighter, that's the point where it's probably best to attack to get a split. That's pretty much what I do. I think what doesn't always happen afterwards is once people get that split is the climb is not as steep, it sort of levels off. If you have the power, that is a good time to just stay on it. Just keep the pressure on, and you can either keep that gap or slowly grow it. So you can see here I'm kicking real hard for me up this, and there's basically that one guy who stays with me, and then right now that gap is actually growing pretty quickly, but once it levels off, you'll notice that I definitely slow down. Like, this is not sustainable for 3.5 minutes for me, or 3 to 4 minutes for me, but I can keep it up at 5.3 to 5.5, basically just keep the pressure on, keep it rolling, maybe back it off a teeny bit on the downhills, but you still want to keep that speed up. And if you do that, what you'll notice in a lot of races is that you get that initial gap at that steep part, but then you can keep it or expand it up here just by keeping the pressure on. Alright, so we've crested the climb. Now the main thing is we have 3.5 miles to go, so say 9 minutes left to ride. The group is about 15 seconds back, so that's a decent gap for that climb. The goal here is to just keep the pressure on, so that's basically what I do, is when that dude is trying to take a break, I just keep it rolling. I just want to keep the speed high, not lose a lot of time to the group on the downhill, not blow myself up and go super hard, but you want to just kind of keep it rolling, keep that speed high, try to maintain that gap, and then once it levels out, then we can start trading poles, or but there's still a fair amount of distance to the finish line, a couple miles. So that's going to take whatever 5-6 minutes even once we get to the bottom of this. So you really need to keep on the pressure. Fortunately, with the thing on the side, you can look and see how much work they're doing behind you. You can see what the gap is, so you can kind of modulate your effort based on that if you're in this kind of situation. Like right now, once it levels out, if I see people behind, throwing down 6 watts per kilogram or something like that, like a really high effort level, then I would probably tone down the amount of power I'm putting out, and I would recognize that they're going to catch us, and I would try to recover and conserve some energy before that catch, and make sure that I could accelerate when the catch happens so that they don't just go flying by. So anyway, what you'll see is that we work pretty well together. When we get to the end, I was feeling pretty cooked, and I wasn't really feeling like sprinting. So, and this guy had pulled quite a bit, so I felt pretty comfortable letting him go. And then at the last second, I was kind of like, oh, maybe I should sprint. So I kind of put in a half-hearted sprint and really just closed the teeny bit gap up to him, and he still won. And I didn't use my power up. So I think the key is, for these small group sprints, is if you're in a race, you're probably gonna give it a real go, a real sprint. And I would probably try to keep the effort high to keep that gap, so I'm just sprinting against one person, but also try to collect myself and sort of mentally prepare for the sprint and have my hands in the drops and just be ready to do that within like a minute to 2 minutes of the end. Actually, I think I picked that up from I was watching a number of Chris Pritchard's races, and I noticed that basically with like about 2 kilometers to go, so about 1.5 miles, he would just kind of calm himself. He'd get into position and just sort of, it looked like he would mentally prepare himself for the sprint. And in the past, I had felt like that I would kind of, all of a sudden, I would be riding, and then all of a sudden the sprint happens, and I'm like not prepared for it mentally to actually sprint at that point. I'm not physically prepared to sprint. So taking that little bit of time, even now, I could have started here, still putting out the effort, but preparing mentally, getting my hands in the drops, and just knowing that, okay, I'm gonna have to sprint in X amount of time. And then if I'm waiting for someone else to light up the sprint, but then when I see that happen, I'm not completely caught off guard, and I can go, and I'm mentally prepared for that. So I didn't really do that today, but I have done that some other days. And what you'll notice if you watch more videos is I don't really have a sprint. I'm not much of a sprinter. So, but the way this unfolded at the end, I probably could have hit it real hard at about 100 meters to go and squeaked out the win. My legs were probably happy that I didn't, since I wanted to ride another 1.5 hours. I wanted about 2.5 hours of ride time today. So sprinting at the end of a race definitely doesn't make the legs feel good when you have to ride it, or when you want to ride another 90 minutes. Alright, so I normally have Sunday on my training plan as 2.5 to 3.5 hour unstructured endurance session. The length really depends on the phase I'm in my training plan and how I'm feeling. And then the goal is, after that event finished, was to just ride zone 2 endurance zone, keep it steady, and just crank it out for a while. So you'll notice that when the chart pops up, it's basically the goal was to paint it blue, as much blue as possible, as little of any other color as possible. Then tomorrow for me is the active recovery day, so that's all under 50% FTP zone 1 to just kind of get the blood flowing, shake out the legs, and then hopefully be ready for a threshold session on Tuesday morning.